Yeah, I think we'll start there anyway. So, welcome
Okay.
everybody. Thanks very much for joining us. My name is James Fox. I'm the coordinator for Parenting Monaghan, uh, and welcome Stella O'Malley to. Thanks very much to you for agreeing to give us this talk, and also to agreeing to recording it because we're such a small number. It'd be great that we can pass on this information and these helpful tips later on and that kind of stuff as well. So if everybody's happy enough that it's being recorded, then we can go ahead with that. Uh, I'd ask everybody to maybe stay muted. Well, you're just saying there actually maybe that we can have a maybe more informal kind of approach and that stuff. So if you have any questions, you can put it into the chat, or you can actually just unmute yourself and maybe uh, ask Stella as she's going through the presentation to clarify something or anything like that and that kind of stuff. So feel free to do that. So the presentation, I think, Stella, that you're saying is probably takes about 45 minutes. And then if we do have any kind of outstanding questions after that, then we can go through them then, and we'll finish probably within the hour then after that.
Okay. Thank you very much. You're
Thanks.
all very welcome. Thanks for bringing me in there. And it's great to talk to everybody. I do want to say that, yeah, you are very welcome to give any questions that you might have. I've written a few books on parenting. Cottonwool Kids was out in 2015, and it's about kind of anxious parenting. And then Bullyproof Kids, very much about bullying and how many kids don't feel part of a friend group and things. And then my latest book, Fragile, is out a couple of years, all about anxiety. And there's a few different projects I've been involved with over the last couple of years. So about technology. And I kind of said, is it a moral panic? Which some people think it's just a moral panic. This is the way life is these days. Kids are like that. And I kind of think back to kids smoking back in the 50s, and they were all smoking. And everybody just said, that's the way it is. Do you follow me? And honestly, cigarette companies were making huge amounts of money on the back of that, and the cigarette companies have been studied, and they knew that there was problems way before they started putting warnings on the cigarette packets. And so, those kids smoking there, like, and that pint baby, do you see that kid drinking? And like, it was all a bit of crack. And I remember my own self when I was a kid, my mom used to give me Guinness and orange, believe it or not, as a drink. So it's extraordinary what we get used to in a culture. And you see the babies there with the screens. I'm not saying it's always a bad thing. I'm very pro technology. The fact is, I'm on technology talking here, and I use technology all day, every day. So I get it. It's very alluring. At the same time, the pluralistic ignorance means we are all ignorant, as in we're all buying in to this. And yet, when you actually look at the Silicon Valley, if you look at Silicon Valley, and they're the people who've been into technology since the 80s, they're way ahead of us, and they've been living that world. And as it says there in the slide, many leading technology innovators and CEOs of tech companies, they're limiting their kids' screen time. And they distinguish between consuming technology and creating technology. So consuming is basically playing a game, playing PlayStation. Creating is maybe filming, maybe making, like even TikTok is a form of creation, as in they're doing a dance or something like that. So some sort of creation is much better for them than consuming. Consuming is a little bit mindless, and they're just nodding along and they're playing their game. And frankly, companies are making huge. Hello, am I back? You're muted yourself.
Sorry, I accidentally muted you. I was admitting someone else, and anyway, sorry about that.
No bother, no
You're in
bother.
mid-flow there. Sorry.
It's a good way to keep me on my toes.
Good.
I want to reiterate. I'll let anybody in as they come in. Don't worry about it. What's it called? Don't forget, if you do want to come on and talk, it's no bother. It's a small group, so I'm not worried at all about whether you disturb me at the end or you come in the middle of it. So here's a few quotes from a few leading tech innovators. And we all know that fight. You see, the problem is the kids are so happy when they are on their screens, but then the fight afterwards, is it worth the happiness for the previous hour? So Steve Jobs was asked when he unveiled, his smartphone or whatever the hell he unveiled in 2011. And he was asked by an eager journalist at the time. He was in the middle of launching a product. And he was asked, so have your own kids played on it? I think it was the iPad. I think that's what he was launching. And the journalist, keen, enthusiastic journalist, said, what do your own kids think of it? And Steve Jobs completely changed. You can look it up. It's a really interesting kind of clip. And his face completely changed. And he said, oh, they haven't seen it. They haven't played on it. We limit how much technology our kids can use at home. It's like, oh, isn't that charming? So he was selling it all to us. And he completely changed when he was asked about his own kids. He's like, no, we don't let our kids have technology. The Apple CEO, Tim Cook, he doesn't have children himself, but he's very close to his nephew. And he said in 2018, not that long ago, I don't want my nephew on a social network. Very clear. And then Dick Costello, the ex-CEO of Twitter, he confines devices into one room, into the sitting room. You won't let them in any other room. So do you see, they are the leading lights. And what they say when they've been interviewed about it is, we've seen people fall into it. It's almost like out of 10 kids, you'll have 9 that are perfectly fine, and you'll have 1 who falls in, and they fall in very deep and they don't quite come out. Very like alcohol, very like a lot of addictions, you know what I mean? There'll be 9 that be fine, and there'll be 1 that won't be. And so if you know your kid won't be, and I'd almost check your own belly, because you kind of know the way they are, if they have that intensity about them, now's the time to start teaching them. Now's the time to start saying, yeah, we're going to address this. So continuing on, this is in Silicon Valley. They have a thing called, Waldorf schools are well known all around the world. They're basically focused on gardening, on outside, on wooden play, on low tech. So as it says there, CEOs of leading tech companies in Silicon Valley, they're choosing to send their kids to Waldorf schools that are low tech for their own children. They're not letting them send their kids to kind of high tech, because they know the high tech is coming anyway. They know it's all over the place. Their children average 30 minutes screen time on a school night, and they say they've seen the impact of too much technology. So it's not as if they do no tech, but they do have a low tech lifestyle for their children. So it's just something to be aware of, that when you've really immersed yourself in technology, you can become a little bit wary of how much it is. And so many parents a few years ago, when tech first kind of came, and it's interesting, I was only talking to a parent yesterday, and her oldest was 24 and her youngest was 10. And she said the difference in those 14 years, the difference between being a 10-year-old 14 years ago and now, that the 10-year-old now is just immersed in technology in comparison to 14 years ago. That's how fast it's been. It has come in like a rocket into all our lives. And we're the new parents of this generation. There's never been a generation with so much tech. I wasn't on Facebook 10 years ago. I wasn't on Twitter. I'm on all of these now. I wasn't on Snapchat. I wasn't on WhatsApp. I wasn't on Instagram. I wasn't on any of those. So they all came into my life, and they're big parts of my life now. And it's an indication of where the kids are on. So what I want you to know about what drives anybody to get onto tech is, it's fundamentally our survival instinct. And our survival instinct is driven by 2 things, which is the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. And everything you do is either the pursuit of pleasure or the avoidance of pain. Everything, just name anything, and I'll be able to break it down to, it's probably the pursuit of pleasure or the avoidance of pain. You can go through everything from eating your dinner to having a fight with your husband. There will be some way it'll be the pursuit of pleasure or the avoidance of pain. And if you look at the graph to the right, you use social media, you receive attention. When you receive attention, you get a dopamine hit. And that's what makes you use social media. So it's all based, the entire internet, social media, video game, the entire kind of consuming technology that so many of us use is all based around the chemical dopamine. And dopamine is fabulous. Dopamine is extraordinary. Dopamine is basically the pursuit of pleasure. It's the pleasure-seeking hormone. And so every time you go on Facebook, you're basically looking for a dopamine hit. Every time you do most things, you're looking for a dopamine hit, which is basically, I think this will be pleasurable. And so you go on, and that little squirt of dopamine keeps you going on, and you keep scrolling because you keep looking for pleasure. You keep looking for it. So as it says in the slide there, the internet is based upon people pressing these buttons in a bid to stimulate this reward system, always looking for the dopamine hit. For every like, share, every page load, oh, I've got an email. You know those little ding ding, I've got a text. And I know part of you might go, oh, another one. But there's another little part in your body, a little whack of dopamine goes out in your brain of anticipation of pleasure, something new, a text, an email, a ring. Every single time it's a little into your brain, a little squirt of dopamine. Every squirt of dopamine is interpreted by the brain as an act promoting our survival. We're seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, even though in reality that's not the case. So do you know the way you might scroll? So many people have almost a triangle, but at this stage it's a 5-angled, what do you call it, a quadrangle or something. No idea what you call it. But we have our pattern. So I might go onto Twitter, flick over to Facebook, have a look at Mumsnet, go over to Mumsnet, go over to Instagram, back to Twitter, flick over to Facebook, go over to Mumsnet, onto Instagram, back over, and I have my little 4 kind of pattern. And every one of us here will have our pattern, and we go bang, 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 back over again, bang, 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 and we go around and around and around. And every single time, seeking dopamine, seeking dopamine. That is what we're doing the whole time. And it's extraordinary because we're getting little hits of dopamine. Every single time we're getting this little hit of, oh, a new message, oh, a like, oh, a share. It's so pathetic when you stand back and you realize the entire internet has kind of, social media internet has based itself on that. So if you look at the graphic there, it's all about dopamine. Social media, and then you perform the action, you wait for the reaction, which is a like, a comment, a thumbs up or something, and then you feel your little hit of dopamine. And so you go further social media, then you get another, you do something to get more likes, hits, shares, whatever, and you go round and around and around and around. And that's what you're doing. Basically constantly looking for something new. They've done tests on mice, okay? I'll read through this and I'll tell you about it. So mice will continue to press buttons that stimulate the reward system until they die of starvation, even when there's food on the other side of the cage. So I'll just explain that. They did this extraordinary test where every time the mice pressed a lever, they would get a squirt of dopamine every single time. So they knew, just like you pressing a button and your kid pressing a button like video game, more, every single time. And the mouse kept on pressing the button for more dopamine, always seeking more pleasure, until they starved to death, even though there was food that they could walk over and get on the other side of the cage. But dopamine is so enthralling. It's so kind of addictive, and the whole balance of addiction, the entire addictive kind of concept is centered on dopamine, seeking pleasure all the time. That's what cocaine, heroin, alcohol, cigarettes, seeking pleasure. So that's what a mouse would do. They will just keep on pressing the lever to get dopamine rather than eating, even when they're about to die. And they died. It's a shocking study that they did, but that's what they found they did. And I think that's what we're like. We just press and we're scrolling constantly. If you're not pressing, looking for likes, you're scrolling, looking for novelty, the whole time looking for dopamine. The artificial stimulation of the reward circuit tricks the mouse's brain into believing that they'll achieve pleasure and avoid pain. So that's what's keeping your kids and us on the computer, on the tech. And I'll go to how to manage that in a few minutes, but I wanted to give a bit of a background about it. So here are the happy chemicals in our body. We've kind of got 4 main ones. So each happy chemical triggers a different good feeling. So there's dopamine, which I've been telling you loads about. Dopamine is a pleasure seeking, and this leads to the joy of finding what you seek. That feeling of, I got it. So with scrolling, it's like, yeah, got it. That's what we're doing all the time when you're scrolling. When you're scrolling on YouTube, when you're scrolling on a news site, when you're scrolling whatever you're doing, your kids are doing the constant dopamine on TikTok. Just scroll, another video. That's what's luring them in, and it's incredibly addictive. I want to repeat, addiction is centered around dopamine, So if you want to go and look up why is somebody addicted to heroin, you'll find it's dopamine. So there's a huge correlation with dopamine and addiction. And now you can see why your kid is just kind of slack-jawed looking at TikTok. He's just in the thing. He's in it, just looking for more and more hits. There are other happy chemicals, just so you know. Endorphin produces that oblivion, often called euphoria, that kind of gorgeous feeling that washes over you, maybe at a concert or lots of different other ways. Oxytocin produces the feeling of being safe with others. It's often called bonding. When you feel really close to people, really connected, that lovely warm feeling, that's oxytocin. A lot of mothers, by the way, produce huge amount of oxytocin just after giving birth, after the hell. They suddenly feel really warm towards the baby who brought the hell. And it's been measured, the masses of oxytocin at that point, and they're bonding away, which is lovely. And then serotonin. that's a gorgeous thing, and it's great to kind of help your children achieve it, which is that lovely feeling of being respected by others. You know, that feeling of a job well done, when you did well. That's what serotonin is, kind of satisfaction. So I'm more interested in dopamine than in the other ones, because that's where the technology, they have centered on it. And when you think about it, it's a multi-billion euro industry that has our children on tech. And they've figured out it's all about the dopamine, to keep people online, to make an awful lot of money, keep on giving them hits of dopamine. And that's just got it. That feeling of, I understand it. Yes, I get it. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I got that. And that's where all the hits are. It starts at a young age, and they start so young. They're around about 8 or 9, and it's all very sweet, and they can mess with their, and that's a little bit of creative technology. They're starting to put bunny ears, and it's all so sweet. My problem with that is it's huge amount of focus on their looks. From a very young age, especially girls, they're doing that. And it's all about what they look like. It's very cute and very sweet. And I have to say, the technology giants are geniuses, because they'd know that had they done something a bit more distasteful, the parents wouldn't let them on it. But what parent couldn't melt with the sweetness of that sort of stuff? And that's how they lure us in. They let us in, because we think, Jamie, isn't it sweet? Look at them. They're making these funny pictures. And it soon turns into that. Still a focus on their looks, an awful lot of kind of all Snapchat. The second you go on Snapchat, you're looking at your face. I've actually never looked at my face so much in my life until this last year, because of technology, because of COVID. I suddenly know things about my face I literally was not aware of, because I literally never examined my face. These kids have examined their faces way more than we have. And we often think it's leading to great confidence, but it's not. It's leading to a huge amount of anxiety. It's leading to a huge amount of vanity. For a little while, they might be happy with their looks, but very often it quite soon turns into that. So they go from sweet little girls to, a few years later, to really quite an ostentatious. I know that's kind of over the top, but you get my point, that it becomes very vain in a few years, and it may be 8 short years. And then, understandably, these girls who've been lured in all about their looks, you can see why they fall into doing things online that are unfortunate. I do want to say at this point, well, like I say, I'll talk about managing it in a few minutes, but I do want to say that the worrying years for sexting, for inappropriate pictures, more and more, I'd say 6th class, 1st year and 2nd year, that's where it's crazy. By the time they've got into 3rd year, they've learned some sort of sense around the thing. By TY, they're really learning sense. You know what I mean? But they've also seen people shamed and ruined by it. And that's how they learned the sense. So just to be aware, 6th class is becoming a bit of a mess, really, technology-wise. And they're so young, they're all over the place. They don't even know what they're at. You know what I mean? They're way out of their depth. So it's something to be quite aware of, that the kind of the 5th, 6th class, it's inched down. I remember giving this same talk, and I was talking with 2nd years, and that was about 4 years ago. I was saying 2nd years was a crazy year, and everybody, this was in a real life talk, everybody was agreeing that 2nd years, teachers were saying 2nd years is a mess. It's gone shot right down. It's more like 6th class moving into 5th. That really crazy stuff. And you're thinking, how are they sexting? This is ridiculous. They don't even have anything to show. And they don't, but they're still sending weird stuff, especially the kids that aren't supervised around it. So what are the issues? Self-absorption and vanity. It's all about selfies. And by the way, vanity is very linked to anxiety. There's an echo chamber. They start kind of hearing their same views, the same thoughts. They can become quite narcissistic. The boys more than the girls. So the girls fall into a lot of vanity. The girls fall into a lot of social media, a lot of kind of TikTok, and a lot of social media, exchanging pictures, how they look, putting on makeup, photos of themselves, an awful lot of vanity. That can lead very quickly to a very critical eye. So I remember a kid coming into me, and she was so upset and she was so distressed. And she wouldn't quite tell me for a little while what was wrong with her. And ultimately, in the end, she said, "It's my eye." And I looked at her going, what's wrong with your eye? I literally couldn't see what to her was this massive event, which was her eye was slightly crooked or something like that. But the point was, I couldn't actually see what had been magnified for her into a massive event that she needed to go to counselling. Why? Because she was looking at herself too much. You know what I mean? That's what narcissism stems from, looking at yourself too much. Be very wary of the kid who's looking in the mirror all the time. while the boys at the same age, in and around 10 or 11, they're falling into PlayStation, into games. They can become very numb to violence. They can be very gleeful and funny around cruelty. They can send each other, the boys in particular, send each other really cruel, hard kind of, videos of not only hardcore porn, but like just hardcore kind of horrible pranks where people really hurt themselves, almost snuff videos, like horrible videos of violence where they're having a laugh. And it's this kind of distorted view of sexuality. They're looking for thrills. Their friends are better online. They really feel very, and just to, the last point is the hikikomori. It's huge in Japan, hikikomori. Basically, they are boys that end up just staying in their rooms. They stay in their rooms, they eat in their rooms, go to the toilet, basically in the toilet next door to them, if you follow me. But basically their lives are in the rooms because they say, my friends are better online, the sex is better online, everything is better online. I don't want to leave my room. So one of the things I'd like to say for anybody who might want to, like, monitor their kids' kind of technology, it would be around parental controls. I think it's very important that if you've got a kid anywhere between 10 and 15, get some parent controls. There's iKids, that's the orange one. There's Our Pact, there's Circle. And yeah, you pay for it, and you pay for it for a couple of years. And it brings a lot of control. So you might give the kid, okay, you've got 12 hours on PlayStation a week. You can do with what you want. You can do those 12 hours all day on Saturday if you want, but that's your 12 hours. As in, fight with Circle, don't fight with me. Me and you have agreed on it. Now you need to kind of, as such, manage your tech. Because what you're trying to do is, just like we have chocolate in our lives, and we have McDonald's in our lives, and we have fast food, and not only fast food, we have convenience food in our lives. We sometimes have frozen peas and frozen chicken and stuff, but most of the time we try to be healthy. We sometimes eat chocolate, but most of the time we try to be healthy. And if you've got adult children, because I know some of you do, and adult children can bring in an awful lot of bad tech habits for the young kids in the family, they also need to be included in the kind of hygiene, the digital hygiene of the family, because you wouldn't let your adult child, drink beer at 9 in the morning. You wouldn't let them have McDonald's at 9 in the morning. So nor should you let them have unrestrained use of tech at 4 in the morning or 9 in the morning, if you follow me. That you do have the same attitude as you might have to food, or you might have to alcohol, or you might have to chocolate in the household as you would have for tech. It's about you creating a kind of a healthy attitude to tech, because we've got to take hold of it, because otherwise it just becomes this monster that we're kind of slobs around. I have a better version of this. It's this one actually, because that's just hard to see. So there's a couple of questions for parents to think about. Have you control of the devices in the house? i.e., who owns the devices? This emphasis of, I got my iPhone for Christmas, I got my iPhone for birthday, it's quite dubious. It's not very helpful, because the kid honestly thinks it's theirs. And it'd be better off if you gave them an old buckety phone that wasn't that great, rather than they get this pristine, fabulous phone that they treat like the crown jewels and they think they own. Because honestly, they don't really own anything in the house. And on a lot of levels, you own it. It's your house, it's your technology, it's your Wi-Fi, it's your electricity, etc., etc. I do think the parents need to keep some sort of ownership over the situation, because otherwise they can do anything they want at any time they want. Do you know your children's passwords for their social media? I think you should, certainly up to the age of 15 or 16. If they want privacy, they're very welcome to use a diary for privacy. If they want to have private conversations with their friends, which they should have, but they should have them face to face, or they should have them on the phone, FaceTime them, house party them. They shouldn't be writing down their most private thoughts on digital media. And if they are, they're doing something dangerous for themselves. And that's why I would argue you should be able to know their passwords, because they could say it's private. Well, it shouldn't be private, because this is digital media, this is social media. If they want it to be private, write it in their diary, house party their friend, talk to their friend in real life. There's lots of ways to have private conversations. I don't think having screenshotable conversations, and that's what the kids are doing constantly. Everything is private. We had this private chat. I hear it all the time with the kids I see. Oh, it was private chat. It was a private chat, and everything got screenshotted. It's constantly being said to me. So they're thinking, until they get burnt, they think it's a private chat. And then they realize the horror of, no, it was never private. It was being screenshot. Do you check their content? I would openly check. I have kids who are nearly 12 and 13. And I'd openly check. Just give us a look at what you're looking at. Just let me see what you're doing. Just tell me, and do it in a friendly way. You don't have to be like Hitler going in and saying, right, let's check the devices. More like, let me see what you're looking at these days. It'd be like checking out what you're watching these days. You know what I mean? And it's kind of, oh, that looks good. That's interesting. What's this? This seems very vain. What's that all about? Do you follow me? So that you're chatting about it in a positive way and in a kind of less positive way, so that you're really kind of involving yourself in their life. And you might find it boring, but I'd say, you know, we say we'll take a bullet for our kids. This is the bullet. Online digital tech management for kids. This is the bullet we have to take for the next 10 years, because they are consumed with it. So check their online history. You should know how to close down the Wi-Fi. And if you don't, having come here, you know, pay some student who's 18 or 20 quid just to show you, pay them 20, 30 quid just to show you around the technology in your house. Because, you know what I mean? They'll know it quite quickly. Why should you kind of stumble along when you could pay somebody who's 20 years old quite quickly to show you? The devices should go to sleep in a certain place in the house, near your bedroom, preferably, or even in your bedroom. You know what I mean? So that's where the phones go at night. They should go somewhere, maybe in the hall downstairs, but somewhere should the devices be. Each night, that's where they go. So maybe when child 1 goes to bed at 9 o'clock, he leaves his device. Child 2 might go to bed at 11 o'clock. She leaves her device. There's a place to leave your device at night. Letting them into the bedrooms with their devices is a mess. It causes all sorts of, so much cyberbullying happens with uncontrolled devices at night. It kind of turns into the Wild West beyond 11 o'clock. Up until then, they're kind of semi-normal. And then all the kind of unsupervised kids are left on their devices, and the supervised kids are off. And that's when it goes pretty dark, you know. Do you spend time online with them? Go online with them. Have a look at what they're looking at. Have a laugh. There's so much TikTok that they're watching. They're just scrolling through funny videos of cats and horses and stuff like that on TikTok. So have a bit of a laugh. Join them online. So it's not a kind of roll eyes thing. It's a little bit more, you know, accompany them. And speak about the risks. Gather a few stories, you know what I mean? Let's say Ronan Hughes is a very famous story about a guy in Antrim. Very sad story about, he was 17, but he looked about 13. He was a real sweetheart, sweet looking kid. And his parents went public with this story, so I'm not talking out of line at all. Went public because they wanted other parents to know about it. But effectively, like, he got, what's the word, catfished, when he thought he was talking to a girl, and he thought she was gorgeous, but in fact, he was talking to a 30-odd-year-old Romanian who was extracting money from him. And, you know, he thought, and he did a sex act for the girl that he thought was lovely, and got filmed by this, you know, this criminal, who then promised to send the video to all his friends. And, you know, the kid, you know, he went and he told his parents, this has just happened. They were lovely. But that night he went and he died by suicide. He couldn't take it, you know. So it's a really, really sad story. I'd like kids to know stories like that. And I'd like you to find a few stories. There's so many stories out there of just look up kind of shocking, kind of social media, 13-year-old. Look up, Google a few things like that, and you'll find stories that could speak to your child, that your child would identify with, so that they realize that you don't know who you're talking with. You need to know the risks. Just because somebody says they're this, there's a lot of cleverness online. It's not necessarily as it seems. Have a few stories to tell them. Look them up so that you know. So make sure that they know about cyberbullying. You know what I mean? Make sure that their social media accounts are private. Show them about password safety. That is one thing I've noticed in a clinical practice, that the kids are telling each other's passwords as a way of showing that they're good friends. I'll tell you my password, which is crazy, but they do it all the time. Then they log on to each other's accounts and they cause havoc in each other's accounts. So teach your kids to kind of keep your passwords safe. or else to have a system, maybe counting, where they change their password regularly or something, and they might be counting up in numbers or something like that. I don't know. Maybe every month. So let's say we're in July, so there should be a 7 in their password or something like that. Some sort of system. There's loads of different systems, and maybe look online with them about a good system to have a password and teach them. You've taught them how to cross the road. You've taught them to say yes, please, and no, thank you. You've taught them to eat well. Now you're trying to teach them how to behave online. And one of them is good password safety. Good password system. It's a real gift. Ensure that they don't share identifying info. You're just teaching them how to behave online. Check their social accounts pretty much on a monthly basis and report any cyberbullying. So a couple more habits that you have. Set reasonable time limits together. That would be having a chat with your 11-year-old or your 13-year-old and saying, what do you think is fair? Do you think 15 hours a week is fair? Or what about 12 hours a week? And I'll give it to you, and I'm going to get the circle account and I'm going to give it to you. And they might kick off and say, no way. And then say, well, what is fair? And they'd say 60 hours. And you could say, well, that's crazy. Okay, that's crazy. That's, something like 9 hours a day. That's not going to happen. And then talk to them about, why don't you go outside more? Why don't you have a nice summer? You're never going to remember your days spent online. So many kids are saying that they're socializing with their mates online, and it's just as good. And up until last year, parents half believed their kids because they thought, well, this is the new way of socializing. They're all socializing online. It's apparently just as good. Then we parents were all made to socialize online because of the famous COVID. I nearly got through a talk when I talked about COVID. But seeing as this is centered around coming out of COVID, I suppose I have to. But yeah, and then we realized it's not as good. We really realized in the last year or so that no, it's not as good socializing with your mates. There's a lack of something. There's a lack of warmth. There's a lack of connection when you meet. Like if I was standing in front of you and we were giving this talk, we would all feel more close. We would all feel more connected with what I'm saying and with me. There's something about meeting. And all those teenagers who've been saying it's just as good. No, it's not. They're kidding themselves. It's like saying sex is as good online. It isn't. You need the real thing. And they don't know what they're missing. So they're telling me sex is just as good online, and they are telling me that. But friendships are just as good online, and they are telling me that. And I'm like, no, you don't actually know the real thing. You haven't got good friendships because you're online all the time with your mates. They're online. I know kids, and literally there was, some kid I knew, and she was about 500 yards from her best friend, and they didn't see each other all over lockdown. They chatted all the time online because they were both comfortable, a little bit anxious and comfortable with the distance. There's a distance. It's like seeing somebody through a screen, and an awful lot of kids are much happier with that. So just be wary of their determination to stay online rather than chat with their mates. Set reasonable time limits together. Number 2, avoid screen time being alone time. An awful lot of kids, it's theirs, their alone time. They have a room set up where they're on their own. Watch those little tech rooms on their own. Try to get it into the sitting room and make that little room a laundry or something. Those little tech rooms where the kid spends the summer in that little dark little room, it's not good. They see it as alone time. It would be better if they were doing the tech in the sitting room. Annoying maybe for you, much better for them because you'd see what they're doing. It's much more communal. They won't feel alone. They won't be as happy. They won't be as insistent on staying in their crazy cocoon because they won't feel like they're in a cocoon because they're in the sitting room. So it would be better if the tech was in the bigger room than in these little rooms. Set tech-free zones. So the kitchen could be a tech-free zone. The bedrooms could be a tech-free zone. When cigarettes came in and we all had to stand outside to have a cigarette, it was very good for our consumption of cigarettes. The very same for tech-free zones. You don't take the phone call in the kitchen. You go outside to take the phone call because you've made the kitchen a sacred space where there's no technology in the kitchen. We eat in the kitchen. We chat in the kitchen. We're not having technology in the kitchen. And it's a good way of putting a few rules around the household. The very same with tech-free times, number 4. So you might say no tech after 11 at night, no tech before 9 in the morning. And for kids, very much during the summer holidays, we're coming out of COVID, no tech between 12 and 6. Do what you want, but no tech between 12 and 6. And maybe you can have one day of tech because there's some tournament on a Saturday or whatever the hell they're doing. Maybe let them have one free day. Yeah, you can have one free day, but generally 12 to 6, you do whatever you need to do. You go out with a ball, you get bored, you do my head in, You do whatever you want, but between 12 and 6, there's no tech, because frankly, it's bad for you in the middle of your summer holidays to be 12 years old and being online the whole time. And I would strenuously argue that this really is quite important for kids, that they have the daytime to be told, yeah, you're bored. Yeah, I know you're bored. That's what kids are during the summer holidays. Go and find some fun. Find some mates to have some fun. And I'll tell you that in a minute. Research the apps they are using. They're probably using TikTok. They're probably using YouTube, but have a look at what they're watching. Teach healthy online behavior. I told you about that, their passwords, their safety. Educate about online risks. Make sure they realize giving away your name, giving away your details, think of that, you know, that person. So many boys in particular have told me like things like, oh, I'm friends with, you know, a 27-year-old who lives in Sweden, and like he's really high up in Google. And I'm like, is he really? Why is he talking to a 13-year-old boy? I don't know if he's so high up. And there's a lot of that. An awful lot of boys being lured in by supposed great guys who are in these great jobs, and they're gullible, they're kids, but they're too cocky and they think they know everything because they might be brilliant at a certain game. So watch out for that. And the last one, that's the thing I kind of hesitated over earlier. Explore our offline risk taking rather than online risk taking. Between the ages of 12 to about 25, children have a high need to take risks. It's part of the challenge, it's part of the task of growing up. You need to take risks. So that's why they're exploring. That's why they're having kind of sexual development and kind of sexual exploration and fumbling and kissing, hopefully, girlfriends and boyfriends and things like that. However, it's been shown the less risk you take in real life, the more risk the child will take online. So if they've got a very sheltered life where they're not really doing much in physical reality, they're much, much more likely, it's like a pendulum, they're much, much more likely to take risks online, i.e. sexting, i.e. inappropriate behavior. There's a lot of ways you can take online risks. And I would argue they're much more dangerous because these days, really, physical life is quite safe. We're really, really living in a very, very safe country, even with the details around COVID, even with all the deaths around COVID. We've never had, even including the deaths, we've never lived in such a safe era. We've never had such low infant mortality. We've never had such low child accidents. We've never been safer. So your childhood was significantly more dangerous than your children's childhood. The problem is they're taking more risk and they have an awful lot more mental health challenges because one would argue that they're inside an awful lot. So that's the little boys that fall online and they get into their games. They end up being very understimulated in certain levels, kind of their connection with kids, their ability to bond is quite unstimulated, overstimulated kind of nerves. And that's why you take the game off those kids. It's all dopamine driven to kind of more, pleasure, give it to me. And then you take it off them and they're very nervy and they'll jump into a rage or a tantrum very quickly because they're living on their nerves. So be wary of that. As I said before, there's the guy from Loaded magazine, and he said online porn is making addicts of our sons. It's something I had to be really aware of. I'm hearing them more and more around 5th and 6th class. Little boys who haven't a notion what they're at, falling into hardcore porn because one boy in the class found it and is sharing it. It's unfortunate, and it's happening way more often than any of us would like. And it's not soft, it's fairly hard what they're watching. So view technology as a convenience to be used within a healthy lifetime, just like chocolate, just like fast food, just like alcohol, just like gambling. It's something you use, but watch out for it. Set boundaries based on your family's values. You know, have your own boundaries. Help kids see the marketing. Tell them about the dopamine. Tell them about the money being made around TikTok and YouTube. Go and look it up so that you know it. Make sure you're aware of your child's online preferences. Find out what they like. Get them to talk to you. Even if you're bored about that game, ask them about it. Get them to talk to you. Find out what they're good at, because very often kids who get very, very into online world, they're good at one of the things. And that's where they're getting their pride. And more than anything, if you could be a role model of appropriate tech behavior. I'm going to finish up in a couple of minutes. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat and I'll answer them. But I just want to say that, you know, the implications on the body, the overuse of technology can it can permanently, but it can also temporarily impair the brain's chemistry and neural pathways. The second point is very interesting. Children who overuse technology report persistent body sensations, that kind of shaky, nervy feeling, and they feel like they're on alert all the time, which is why they lose the head so quickly. It's called a persistent hypervigilant sensory system. They're basically on alert. Why? Because they've been playing. If they haven't been playing with their thumbs on such, you know what I mean? They're on social media looking for likes, looking for likes. They're hyper vigilant. And then their mother says something, and they're like, what? They're completely overreacting because they're literally on their nerves. And you all know that feeling of feeling wired because you've been online too much. They have it, but they have it in a much more nervy way. And that stress, it's chronic stress on their body. It can weaken their system and makes them more likely to feel sick. Be aware of their sleep needs. School-age children need slept. So it's something to be very aware of if at all possible. How much sleep is your kid getting? Get the devices out of the rooms. I just can't emphasize it enough. I think of one more slide I want to show you. Yeah, this, and she's, oh, recording back. And just to finish on this quote, she said, we see cyber feral behavior online because the reality is there's nobody in charge. Nobody is in charge. Anything can happen online. Just be aware that we've never really had a life. It's like the Wild West, literally when the pioneers went to the West in America and there was Indians and there was, you know what I mean? You're literally, there's nobody in charge online. So anything could happen. And so like your kids are literally adjacent to, you know, prostitution and red light and stuff like that. If they happen to not have controls on their phone, they could stumble in accidentally. I remember one kid, and he was so young, he was only about 9, and he was obsessed with the Titanic. And he spelled Titanic, but after T-I-T, he did a gap by accident. And he got some crazy stuff online, and his mom said, what were you looking at? He goes, I just spelled it wrong. Poor little chicken. My point is, they can fall into stuff. They're not great at spelling. They do make mistakes, and there's a lot of weird stuff online. We adults have got used to just avoiding it, ducking out of it, seeing it. And so you've got to teach them, because who else is going to teach them? You've taught them to be wary of strange men. You've taught them to be wary of you know, certain types of kind of, I don't know, things to be wary of. Make sure they're wary of this. As it says there, kids are engaging with technology. Parents and teachers have little or no guidelines. You give your kids the guidelines. It doesn't take a rocket science to figure out that something is wrong and we need to act now. We need academic first responders. Her point being is there's nobody in charge. I'll just stop the sharing now. There's nobody in charge, and it's time for, I suppose, the parents to think, if there's nobody in charge, well, I better start involving myself in this because it's too scary without it. So I'm not sure, does anybody have any questions they want to ask me?
I was going to say, actually, Stella, that maybe I think I'll stop the recording there actually next up, because if people want to give examples in that, maybe they'd feel more comfortable if there was no recording. So just regarding the recording, thanks very much for the talk and that stuff. It was very informative, and we're just going to stop the recording now and people can ask questions then after that.